Hello, today I'll be reviewing the Ultimate Doom. Doom had its initial release on December the 10th, 1993, and 2 years later on April 30th, 1995, an upgraded version of the game named The Ultimate Doom was released, which contained an additional fourth episode. Doom shares the same feel as most first-person shooters in that the play must advance through a level by following a certain route through a map full of enemies which the player must kill or be killed by. The player is able to run out of ammo, and so ammo pickups are placed in certain areas to ensure that the player can find more. Health pickups and armor pickups are also placed around the levels, which allow the player to regenerate health and buff up their damage resistance. The player is able to move forwards, backwards, strafe and look left and right. Most levels are structured as rooms and corridors, and the players will usually find themselves having to complete an objective in a room, such as killing the enemies and finding the secret key which they use to open a door into the next corridor stage, where they will fight their way through to the next room. This style of gameplay is simple but was a common route for developers to take in early first-person shooters, as it provides a good clear level structure for both the developers to work on and the player to understand. While the single-player gameplay was great, what really stood out to some was the deathmatch mode, which allowed players to fight against each other over a network connection, which to some was completely unimaginable up until this point. This was a new breed of multiplayer gaming and allowed players to fight against other players, who posed a much bigger threat compared to the game's enemies, as real people are much smarter than AI. Doom's multiplayer has since improved with the addition of co-op to Doom 2016, which allows to work together and kill enemies alongside their friends, allowing for a completely new type of gameplay. HUD Doom's heads-up display features indicators for the player's health, their current weapons, armor, ammo cache, and a mugshot in which the player can see their character, who will change appearance depending on his current health. In comparison to Doom's 2016 release, the heads-up display is very clunky and takes up much of the screen, meaning that the player has a smaller field of view. Doom 2016 has a much more modern heads-up display, which almost entirely clears up the player's field of view, allowing them to see the environment much better. Some players, however, miss the original heads-up display due to it being easier to understand because of the big letters and solid background. The Ultimate Doom's sound effects are very high quality and help add immersion to the game in many ways. For weapons, the sound effects can be described as simply very powerful. The player really does get a feel for the power of their gun by just listening to the sounds the gun makes as it fires. Doom being a game with a large variety of weapons, the player can also expect a large variety of sounds to fit these weapons. You can tell which weapon is which by simply listening to the sound produced when the gun is fired. For example, the sound produced by the pistol which the player starts off with is very different to the powerful plasma gun. The enemies of Doom feature some great sound effects, all having their own distinctive sound effects like roars, which emphasize their danger, and their death cries, which can provide great satisfaction and feelings of accomplishment to the player. They also add to the gunplay by allowing the player to hear an enemy before entering a room, meaning that they can prepare by restoring health and equipping a suitable weapon before entering the room. As the player advances through the game, they will learn the sounds made by their enemies, and their playstyle will adapt to this. Doom's background audio is, to many players, an essential part of their immersion. The game features a large variety of music, which ranges from 8-bit covers of a number of classic thrash metal songs to the game's very own collection of ambient and atmospheric sounds to immerse the player by giving a very dark, hellish feel to their experience. The game's 8-bit thrash covers fit in very nicely with the gunplay, which is fast-paced and brutal, and this is exaggerated by the tracks heard. The atmospheric sounds are also great, as they really help the player to feel immersed in the game by giving life to the environments through the use of sounds like distant eerie noises, which can truly give the feeling of the player being alone, while the fast-paced metal covers make the player really feel like they are in a fight for survival. Doom 2016 features a very similar variety of music, however, while the style may be similar, the quality is certainly much better, having moved away from the 8-bit style, which can now make the Ultimate Doom seem rather cheesy. The Ultimate Doom features many different chapters, all which contain a number of levels. Levels take place within various parts of a Mars base, as the story of the game is that the Mars base has been overrun with demons and the player character is the sole survivor who must fight to survive. Due to the game's setting, the majority of the game takes place indoors, meaning long corridors are a common sight, which can result in the game feeling repetitive sometimes. There are, however, some larger rooms that are more open, which provides some variety in the gunplay. However, it does feel like these rooms are empty and can sometimes lack interesting designs. In Doom's 2016 release, the player will still experience much of the classic corridor-to-room based gunplay, only with much more detailed environments and a more varied level structure. This results in the game feeling much less repetitive and therefore is engaging to the player. A positive of the room corridor-based level structure is that its simple design meant that some players were able to make and publish their own levels online for other players to play. As a result of this, the game still to this day has an active community. Progress is saved between each level, meaning that firearms and ammo are not lost when the player moves to another level. The breakup of the game into levels within episodes allows the player to replay different parts of each chapter without having to replay the entire chapter. This system was preferred by fans over the Doom 2 level system, which did not split chapters into levels, and therefore if a player wished to replay part of a chapter, they had to replay the entire thing. The Ultimate Doom featured animations that were absolutely brilliant for its day, from the gruesome death animations of monsters to the immersive reload animations unique to each respective weapons. Many world objects are also animated, such as the huge metal sliding doors, which emphasize the sci-fi theme, and the barrels of fire in which the flames will flicker, making the flames truly feel like they are real. Each monster found in Doom has many animations that help bring it to life, such as walking animations, attack animations, and brutal death animations. Each one of these is unique to the creature, which helps to add personality to each of them rather than having them all appear to be the same mindless enemies. Weapon animations are to many players the best thing about Doom. Doom was unique due to its huge collection of weapons that can be obtained and used by the player to destroy their enemies, and the fact that each weapon had its own unique fire and reload animation added to this by creating a feel for the guns that no other game had accomplished beforehand. While these animations were brilliant, one negative is that the animations for larger enemies were not very smooth, as the unnatural animation patterns were emphasized by their size. These animations have stood the test of time well, however massive improvements can be seen in Doom 2016 as everything happens so much smoother due to improved graphics and better, more natural looking animations. The visuals in the Ultimate Doom are much alike many games of the time, which seem to all share a simple, very colorful and pixel-based art style. While the graphics may be simple, they have clearly stood the test of time, as many still enjoy the original Doom games even to this day. Each level seems to have been made with a theme in mind, as while some look very sci-fi themed, others will look very gothic. This provides great variety and will ensure that the player enjoys each level. The environments we as the player get to experience are mainly indoors, with an occasional glimpse at the outdoors. Most rooms are dark other than for barrels of fire which light areas up, and rooms are decorated by bloody corpses and pits of toxic waste which will cause great damage to any player who falls into them. This adds to both gameplay and the environment. If we look outside, we see a very high quality looking sky which looks different across many levels. This is very immersive to the player as it really aids the storytelling. In some levels the sky will look red and violent. This can tell us many things. For example, it highlights the location of the player, which is Mars, the red planet. It also links in with the theme of hell, which is common throughout the game. While in other levels the sky can be seen as a dark gray, thick cloudy sky that rests above large craggy mountains in the distance. This can make the player feel very distant and alone, which is an essential part of the game's plot, as the player is the sole survivor on a distant planet. Doom's main gameplay feature is killing, and killing requires weapons and things to shoot at, so in a game full of enemies variation is required, otherwise the task of shooting them can become very repetitive. Luckily, Doom is full of enemies who come in all different shapes and sizes, which have been drawn to fit hellish sci-fi theme of the game. Weapon sprites are also drawn very well, and they perfectly fit the style of the game. Each respective weapon has its own completely unique sprite which fits together perfectly with the weapon sounds to create amazingly immersive weapons that are a joy for the player to use. The game features many other world objects, such as barrels of fire, and pickups such as armor and health potions, which have their own unique sprites which allow the player to easily recognize how that pickup will benefit them. The barrels of fire act as sources of light, which creates a very hellish feel to each environment they are found in. All of these world objects come together perfectly and fit right into the environment while adding lots of personality to the game. A negative is that while the monsters in no way look bad, some can be difficult to appreciate due to the pixel-based art style. Due to Doom 2016's massively improved modern graphics, the monsters look scarier than ever before, and this really adds to the game and gives them a personality that some may have not felt before. To conclude, the Ultimate Doom was in no way a perfect game, but to many players it was as close as gaming had ever got to being perfect. User-generated content still to this day keeps Doom alive and well, with the additions of near infinite amounts of brand new user-created levels and enemies. The biggest, most positive thing about Doom is the fact that we owe so much to it in terms of the FPS genre, which went mainstream with Doom, and as a result of the hard work put into Doom by its developers, we saw the birth of what was to become one of the most popular, loved game genres.